Welcome to OState Daily. I gave a lot of thoughts on Friday as we bring in Scott McKinley. We have a new defensive coordinator. We have a new defensive line coach, Ryan Osborne. Todd Grantham is the defensive coordinator. We have a lot going on, Scott. You and I have not talked since any of this has gone down. I don't know exactly where your thoughts are going to be at this. That's why I love having different conversations with different people that love Oklahoma State. We all have the same vested interest. And so let's hear your thoughts.
Well, boy, we got a lot to unpack. I think that's the number one thing. But now we've had a lot of, I would say, in my opinion, public drama. That some of it, I think some of the process was necessary. I'm not quite sure that it couldn't have been handled in a little bit better way. That didn't need to be as public as it was. But to start with, the Board of Regents had the meeting on Friday, which we knew about earlier. We didn't have any details or anything about that. But I think kind of to start in with it is what was the reasoning for having that meeting? I think is my first thing I'd start on. And the first thing I look at is when you look at Gundy's contract. You think about it. We had the highest paid coach in the league, and we have one of the lowest NIL budgets in the league. I think even the most ardent Mike Gundy supporter would have to say there's an imbalance there. Just off the top, there was an imbalance in the way that contract was structured. The other thing that they talked about is that basically, that if he didn't agree that he would be fired for cause. Okay, my question will be on that. And again, all of these things are just things that we're hearing. It's not, I don't have firsthand knowledge or anything like that. I got to get that out there. But here's my deal. If you have cause to fire someone.
Nobody knows, Scott. That was going to have to go to the courts. So even if you haven't heard it, nobody, they think they have cause. Nobody knows for sure. One set of lawyers will think you do. The other set of lawyers won't. Right. And then it'll come to a judge.
Right. Well, but obviously they felt that they had cause, whatever the reason was or isn't or whatever, they felt that they had cause. I think the concern, I think what I have though is I didn't like that it basically looked like we were putting out an ultimatum. It was done very, very publicly. We got more bad PR for the program, which was not that's the last thing we needed right now. Again, I'm not saying the changes didn't need to be made. Because in my honest opinion, I think that they did, but I did not like the way that it went down for the last couple of days. And I think my concern moving forward is now if you're Mike Gundy, okay, now you're having to be asked to do the same amount of work that you've been doing for less money, and you're going to be more micromanaged than what you have been. And again, I'm not saying that didn't need to happen, but my concern is moving forward, is everybody going to be able to jump back on that bus to continue moving this program forward after all the stuff that has happened? My hope is answered yes, but I think I'm definitely in a wait and see mode on that because I don't like where we're at right now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no doubt this needed to happen, but when you start letting board members go rogue and you start letting the board make decisions about football matters and you start putting stipulations on a coach, people who know way less about football, way less about Oklahoma State football than the coach that should be hiring and firing and all this, when they start stepping in and kind of jumping the chain, it's not jumping the chain of command because the Board of Regents are there to be shepherds of Oklahoma State. And so they're not there to do day-to-day things. They're there to take care of specific issues that are big that might damage Oklahoma State. And right now, football is such a big deal that if it's not taken care of, you lose a lot at your university. So I understand their need to oversee and all that. But I'm just telling you, man, when you start getting board members involved and they start putting stipulations on coaches, it is not a good deal at any level whatsoever. It's just not.
Yeah, like I said before, I don't like where we're at. Now, I will say this, does Mike Gundy have a role played in how we got to that point where administration's going on? One of the things.
Fire him. If Chad Weiberg goes to him and says, Mike, we got to make some changes. I mean, you have to admit some changes have to be made. Here's the changes that we have to make. If Mike Gundy's arrogant enough to go, nope, not going to do it, then see you, Mike.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. You're exactly right on that. I think the part that I think Mike is really not going to like about this is now he's going to be micromanaged, and we already know for a fact that Mike does not like being micro. That is, well, nobody does. But at the same time, I look at, okay, this is part of my brain went to, this is what happens when you do a Google search for a coach, and then
no doubt,
and it doesn't 100%. Work out. I mean, that's what has caused some of this. But again, I think the problem I look at is how are we going to be able to strike the right balance between, yes, there needs to be accountability, there does need to be some oversight. We can't just have no oversight by anybody, but at the same time, the coach has got to be able to make the decisions he feels is necessary for the program. Because let's be honest, when it comes to hiring, firing coaches, I got a 20-year track record with Mike Gundy. I mean, that's if that's the guy you're going to continue to pay millions of dollars to make these calls, he has to be able to make the call. So I think that's my concern is I think we're kind of in the limbo, which is not where you want to be. We need to have everybody moving in the same direction in order to get this program going forward. So that's my biggest concern moving forward.
Yeah. To me, that's very simple. It's all about the contract. The contract had to be adjusted. Okay. Chad Weiberg and Casey Schrum had to go to Mike Gundy. It is literally their job to explain to Mike Gundy that, hey, Mike, this contract has to be altered. It can't go on like this. There's no accountability to it. There's no anything to it. So you have total autonomy over this, and it's not working out very well. That's literally what their job is at that point. So to me, that oversight stops with the contract, because if you have a contract in place that makes it to where if Mike Gundy makes the wrong hire, then he can be fired, that's all the oversight he needs at that point.
Right. Yeah. That's oversight that every coach has to do with. It is basically you have the freedom to make the hire as you see fit, but there are going to be consequences if you make the wrong one. I mean, that's the way this works, and I don't know. Of course, we still don't know the full details on what the contract's going to be. Obviously, I think everybody can assume it's going to be for less money than what he was making before. I mean, I've heard. You hear the rumor mill going crazy, and we don't like dealing in rumors. We like dealing in fact.
Oh gosh, like the other Oklahoma State media this weekend.
Oh my
Jesus
God.
Christ.
Yeah.
I mean, Gundy was fired. Zach Robinson was going to be the head. Get out of here, man.
Yeah. We're not dealing with that stuff, but but at the same time, my hope is this is going to better position us. Like I said before, there was an imbalance. It doesn't make sense to have the highest paid coach and one of the lowest NIL budgets. Something's got to change right there. And like I said, and I do like the things that I am seeing going on a little bit behind the scenes to try to increase our NIL budget. Yes. I like the things that I'm seeing out of that. And the other thing I would say is Chad Weiberg, he's made a couple of good hires here recently. I like what I'm seeing out of our basketball program. We're doing some
dude.
Yeah, we're doing some good things there. I really love what our wrestling program is doing. There's a lot of good things that are happening throughout our programs. And I don't know how much of this, and we will never know. Was it Weiberg went to the Board of Regents? Did the Board of Regents go to him? How was Dr. Schrum involved in it? Those are things behind the scenes we'll never know. But I think the thing that I did.
Why did it take till Friday?
Yeah, why did it take till Friday?
We're not. I mean, we're hiring a defensive coordinator hours before the transfer portal opens up. A defensive coordinator that was fired in his last college gig. A defensive coordinator that was demoted down to being an analyst at the NFL level.
Yeah. And not to mention we just had a very public standoff with our coach because
that's the kind of guy you're going to get. A guy that's been fired at Florida, a guy that's just been a guy that's desperate for what he considers to be a job at a place like Oklahoma State that's a good football program. That's the exact guy you're going to. Hopefully they can, the offense at Oklahoma State and Mike Gundy be an offensive guy. Maybe they can hit a home run there. Maybe we'll see. But this Grantham hire is exactly what you should have expected out of what happened with Oklahoma State.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. The other thing that I'd say with the very public standoff, those types of things happen all the time, but they're all handled behind closed doors. That's it's basically it's a contract negotiation. One side comes back with this, the other side thinks about it, comes back with this, whatever it is, but they just don't do it publicly, like what happened the last couple of days. So, I just and like we talked the last time we talked, I still had the same concern that I had before: is we've lost our mojo. How are we going to get everybody back to rowing in the same direction? And I just don't know exactly how we're going to be able to do that with a coach that's going to be operating a little bit under duress. And now the good news, if you want a silver lining on trying to move the program forward, we are going to have more NIL dollars available. That's of all this stuff that's been happening, it does look like we're going to have more NIL dollars available, which is a good thing. So, I try to be a glass half full optimist kind of guy, which it's been very, very difficult this last year to do that. But yeah, so
yeah, so there's a fine line. Scott Tyner came on Friday night and did a wonderful job explaining. He's been in these school board meetings and executive sessions and the 72-hour periods and all this kind of stuff. And, I was kind of bitching and moaning about, well, the board putting all these stipulations on who he's going to hire and overlook. And he's like, well, it could be as simple as they just want to put they just want to put on it that, hey, experience required or whatever, just to make sure, like you said, he doesn't make another Google hire, right? So Gundy goes and gets Todd Grantham right here. Todd Grantham's a guy who's been at Florida, got fired at Florida by Dan Mullen. He's been in the NFL. He has some experience. Yeah. So I say that to say you have to be careful because there's a fine line between finding somebody with experience and finding somebody who's a retread.
Yeah. And I think my guess would be on that particular hire is, were we going to be able to make a home run splash hire with limited time that we have got? Because the portal opens tomorrow, right? I mean, so the idea that, we probably weren't going to be able to make an absolute splash hire that was fully vetted, for lack of a better term, that we had our time to do our research and all that kind of stuff. So basically what they're trying to do is let's get a guy that might be able to get the defense back to being even average. But that's been our formula for a very long time is we have an average defense, but then we have just a phenomenal offense. Mm-hmm. And then the last couple of years, our offense has been extremely average and our defense has been way below average. So my guess is that's what they're probably trying to do with this hires. Can Grantham just get us back to being just an even average defense? And then maybe we can fix some things on offense. I don't know. That'd be the hope, but I don't. Time will tell. Like I said, he's at least on paper, the guy's got experience. He's got that. He's got that.
Which tells me that was within the parameters that were given Gundy.
Yes. Yeah. Basically, you're not going to hire somebody that hasn't been around at top Division I football for at least some amount of time. He's not a completely unknown. Nardo at the time was a complete unknown. Yeah. He had some success at Gannon, that kind of deal, but at this level, we knew absolutely nothing about him.
So he's coming from the NFL, right? Mm-hmm. So what players is he going to bring with him?
Well, I'm hoping he can bring some of the New Orleans Saints with him, but I don't know if
he'll. Right? So he's not going to bring any players with him. The last time he was in college, he was fired at Florida. So if you're a big-time defensive recruit right now and you're in the transfer portal, just asking objectively here, okay, what part of this Todd Grantham hire makes you go, hell yeah, let's go to OSU? Other than money, obviously.
Yeah, no, I don't think it does. But like I said, I think what they're trying to do is, can we get it back? First thing we got to do is we got to steady the ship. Let's be honest, I think it's going to be extremely difficult for us to compete for a Big 12 championship next year. That's just, now I hope we surprise everybody and we win the whole thing. We do what Arizona State did. But I think realistically, it's probably not going to happen. Yeah. I really think that their goal with this whole thing is we've got to get back to at least let's have a winning record next year. Let's just try to steady the ship. And that's because the other thing is, again, time is of the essence. This is not something we can wait, a couple weeks for, which, you and I were talking about that. Why did it take so long to fire the coordinators?
And then get to this deal with Gundy on Friday. I mean, that was 7 days after our last game. I mean, what the hell, right?
Well, and you had to know that you were going to have the conversation with him for the last month.
Yeah,
you know, I mean,
you should have already had the conversation.
Yeah, if you believe time is of the essence, and I think everybody would agree that it is, quit wasting it. It's as simple as that, in my opinion.
What is that? You say it perfectly. Anything that eventually has to be done, or how do you say that?
Yeah, and anything that must be done eventually should be done immediately.
Exactly.
And that's, if you know you're going to do it, quit waiting around, just go do it. I mean, I've never understood why that. Now I realize very few things within a university move quickly. You know, it was interesting. Here's an interesting.
It does everywhere else.
Yeah, here's interesting.
Hiring coaches does.
Well, what's interesting? My dad was a professor as a career, and he said it always amazed him that it takes 6 months to hire a department head, but it takes a week to hire a football coach. You know, I mean, it's funny how things can work like that in a university setting.
Absolutely. So you waited 7 days to publicly humiliate your coach, who's the winningest coach you've ever had in the history of Oklahoma State. Okay. And so you needed to do certain parts of it. So you could end up being 7 days late and a couple of hours before the transfer portal opens to hire Todd Grantham. That's the process we've seen from Oklahoma State since they last played on the football field, right?
Yep.
How can anybody be happy with that, with the leadership that Oklahoma State's shown in this? I mean, you've wasted 7 days, publicly humiliated Oklahoma State because everybody else in the United States of America, whether you want to believe this or not as Oklahoma State fans, they're laughing at OSU with the way that they handled this, with the way that they don't understand that Gundy's an arrogant ass to everybody. They don't understand that. They don't understand they don't care. They just know that Oklahoma State is situated in the middle of a pasture, okay, and has been an ag school forever that has sucked at football until Mike Gundy got there. That's the way everybody else in the United States views Oklahoma State. And they probably think as soon as he leaves, we're going to go back, we're going to get put back out to pasture, right? So Oklahoma State humiliated itself in front of the entire rest of the United States of America. They humiliated their head coach. They circumvented likely their athletic director and president, okay, by a rogue board member. Also, we can hire Todd Grantham 7 days after our last game. That's what just happened at Oklahoma State.
Yeah. I mean, it's talk about a bad.
It's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, this, like I said, this is not a good situation. You know, and I think part of the thing, what I think part of the goal with the Regents, I'll just say the administration, because I don't know who said what or whatever behind the closed doors, is I think there is a significant portion of our fan base that thinks that Mike Gundy can do no wrong and they will ride that ship right into the rocks. I think there's another significant portion of our fan base that was actually hoping that he got fired on Friday. And I think what has happened is basically the administration is trying to kind of thread that needle to try to keep everybody happy. Because the other thing, and I'll go back even further as to what caused this, and not just looking at Gundy's contract. The other thing that I'm guessing is they probably were getting some phone calls from some folks that have got some money that were demanding changes or demanding something. You know,
sure.
I mean, that's the driver of everything is money these days in college football. So my guess is
if that's the case, and truly Zach Robinson had interest in Oklahoma State, then fire Mike Gundy and go get Zach Robinson.
Yeah.
Don't do this. Don't embarrass your coach. Don't circumvent your administration. Don't cut the knees out from your head coach to where now he's basically neutered, okay? And then wait 7 days to go hire Todd Grantham. Don't do that. That's my point. Then fire him. Go get Zach Robinson. That's my point there.
Yeah. No, I don't see the reason to go through all the standoff. And I go back to, here's the deal. If you truly believe that you had cause to fire him, fire him. If you really believe that you had cause to fire him, fire him. don't do it like this. But again, this is what we're gonna be left with. Where we go from here is, again, my hope is that we can get enough players in the portal that we can field a decent football team next year. I do think that the NIL dollars are going to help with that. But as far as expectations for next year, I have absolutely no idea where this is going to head. Absolutely no idea.
Yeah, we have a comment here that Joe Craddock is likely to be the next offensive coordinator out of Tulane. We'll have to see. I mean, we'll have to see how much excitement that draws. I know he was at Arkansas, and I don't think that went very well for him, but I think he's done some decent work since then. So kind of what would your thoughts be? What are your thoughts on the offensive side of the ball?
Offensive side of the ball, I think one of the things that I've heard, I'll say this, I've heard this out of a lot of conversations with people this week, is they would like to see Gundy hire somebody that is going to tell Gundy to get out of their offensive coordinating room.
Yes.
Basically they want somebody that's got it's okay to have a strong personality. Well, you look at some of the more successful coordinators we've had. Dana Holgerson, he's got a strong personality. Todd Monken, very strong personality. I think that's the hope with the people I've talked to, that they hope that we get somebody in there that is just going to absolutely just take charge, take the reins, and say this is the way it's going to be done, and let's go. So I think I would kind of be on that bandwagon as well. The other thing I would also say about the offense is let's get back to doing what works with the athletes that we have. One of the things you talked about is, okay, if we're going to try to run a zone scheme, well, let's get a scat back. I completely agree with that. I do think that we need to have a mobile quarterback, which luckily, assuming that these guys stay, Flores and Malaki Smith and Rangel, those guys have got more mobility than what a Bowman had. So I think that's another aspect that I think that we really need. But yeah, I really think on the offensive side is we need somebody that's got a fairly strong personality. Doesn't have to, and that's not to say that Mike Gundy doesn't understand offense. The guy's been involved with the game a very long time. He understands the game. He knows what's going on. But I also think that we need somebody. The other thing I'd look at is we need somebody, if you look at tape, that seems to have a knack for play calling. Play calling is as much of an art form sometimes as a science. And as we mentioned before, in my opinion, we saw what Casey Dunn. Somebody can be a great football mind. They can be a great position coach, great recruiter, but play calling is a different skill set. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that you need to look at is, okay, when this guy has been put in a situation where, hey, we really got to come up with a good play call. We've got to be innovative, or, we got to get this 2-point conversion to tie the game in overtime. The guy can come up with a good play call to make that happen. So I think that's something that I would look at. And I know that there's a little bit of subjectiveness to it because, okay, based around the athletes you've got, just because you make a good play call doesn't mean that you're going to have a good result. Sometimes the defense makes a good play. Sometimes your guy just didn't execute, didn't block the right guy. But I think if you can get a feel for how the guy is as a play caller, I think that will be another a variable that I think that I would try to take in consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. I am with you 100% on the autonomy part of it. I think Mike Gundy needs to be a part of the collaborative process. Like when I cover on my Dodgers Daily site is beautiful because, Dave Roberts is the manager, but they have all these analysts and they have got like Billy Gasparino, who's in the Oklahoma State Hall of Fame. He is the vice president of baseball operations. Well, who in the hell wouldn't want Billy Gasparino in on every decision, right? That dude's absolutely brilliant. So they literally collaborate on every single thing that they do. They come up with a decision. They come up with a game plan. Then Dave takes that game plan and makes out a lineup and then takes it into the game and then makes all the decisions, right? So I want Mike Gundy to be a part of the collaborative process, right? Like, hey, let's collaborate and come up with a plan. Let's do all this. And then once they have collaborated and come up with a plan, that's whenever you get out of the way and let your offensive coordinator go figure out who he wants on the field to begin with, the personnel packages they're going to play from down to down, and let them have total autonomy after you put the collaborative plan together. I see that work every day. 162 times a year for the Dodgers. Of course, they have great players too, but they also are very good on the margins. That's a great process there. I think that right there, the collaborative process with then also the total autonomy after that.
Yeah, because because when we say total autonomy, that doesn't mean that Gundy's never allowed to go into an offensive meeting and that they have to, stay separate at all times, kind of deal. He's not supposed to say anything, but basically, I want somebody that comes in that they have got their own vision about what offense needs to be, and obviously, if Gundy hires them, Gundy is kind of putting his stamp of approval that he agrees with that vision,
yes.
whatever that is. That you don't need to. And again, we saw this with Brian Nardo. Was we brought him in to run one style of defense, and then he was forced to run another one. Maybe the preconceived notion of the 3-3-5 was not the right way to go. That's possible. I know there were personnel changes. I mean, there's a lot that went into it. Sure. But don't bring a guy in on offense because you like what he's wanting to run, and then don't let him run it.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. So, all right. What needs to happen if we're all Oklahoma State fans? We all want to get to the same point. We all get fired up. I said it the other day. You're more level-headed than anybody I know, so you might not have done this, but guys like me who get fired up, we've all said stupid stuff before, right? Okay, but it's about getting it cleaned up and getting it fixed and moving on from there. So this is a gigantic mess. It is what it is. It already happened. I need to stop bitching and moaning about it because it's now Sunday. All this stuff happened last week. We need to start talking about moving forward at this point. I promise I will. I'll stop bitching about last week. Okay, so moving forward, Scott McKinley, it's a tough situation Mike Gundy's in from a perception perspective in the coaches network. The security's not there. That's one thing that he had to offer coaches was, hey, you come here, I'll get you a 2-year contract, and I'm not ever going to get fired. So there's all that. So what has to happen for Mike Gundy to make this work under the circumstances and the situation he's under now?
I'll tell you, I think there's actually a script that I think is already occurring on OSU's campus that I think we need to look towards. Basically, look at what Steve Lutz is doing. So
yes.
When he took over, let's be honest. We had a horrible season last year. Lutz had to hit the transfer portal extremely hard just to even field a team. But I think the other thing that I look at with our basketball team is, okay, they're running an offense. They're playing absolutely tenacious defense. They're hustling for every loose ball. They're scratching and clawing to get every single thing that they can. Are they the most talented team? No. Are they going to win the national championship? No. But I think that's kind of the same thing that I'm looking for next year is that we need to get back to, okay, Mike, if there's a slight edge in a scheme you can find, let's find it. Yes. If there's a slight edge in a personnel or some type of play or something, let's start fighting, clawing for every inch that we can find on the margins, as we always say. I think that, to me, that's what we've got to get back to. We've got to get back to where I want players that are hungry. I want guys that want to be playing at Oklahoma State. And again, and I know Gundy talks about the Cowboy culture and everything. We lost a lot of that this year.
We did.
Let's get back to the things that led to when we did have a good culture in this program. Let's do those things to get back to that, and hold players accountable. Let's tell Rob Glass and just prepare the players, guys. Off season is going to be you're about to work, and if you're not okay with that, this isn't the place for you. I think that, in my opinion, that's what we've got to get back to. We're going to play some hard-nosed football, and you know what? If a team beats us next year, they earned it. I think that's where I want us to get back to.
I can't imagine you go hire a guy that just got demoted from his position in the NFL, from D-line coach to senior analyst. Okay, that's what happened to the guy we just hired, a defensive coordinator, Todd Grantham. I can't imagine you go hire that guy to go recruit high school kids to rebuild a program, right? I mean, you wouldn't, if you're wanting to start from scratch and say, let's rebuild from the bottom up and go get high school kids and rebuild this and make this a rebuild program, that's not the guy you go get. I think it's a really good indicator that Mike Gundy's looking for a really quick Band-Aid.
Yes. Well, what's interesting about it, you think about it, Todd Grantham, he's the exact opposite of Brian Nardo. Brian Nardo was a young guy coming from that had very little experience. You got Grantham, he's an older guy that's got all this experience. And maybe that was intentional, maybe it wasn't. But no, I agree with you. I think this is I think that hire is all right. How do we shore up the defense to where we can actually have a somewhat credible defense next year? Because the other thing I looked at was just looking at Grantham's resume. That guy has jumped around a lot. He is not. If you were hoping for a coach that would stay here for 20 years, Grantham is not the guy. He's just not the guy. Another thing, Casey, that I think that I kind of wanted to bring up, and I'm going to say this. I hope all OSU fans hear me on this one. Okay, I don't say that very often, but you need to hear me.
Good luck, Scott. I wish you luck on this.
This one, you need to hear me on this one. First, I'm going to give you a couple names and some situations. How about that?
Awesome.
Nick Saban, greatest college football coach of all time. He left LSU. Okay. Lincoln Riley left OU.
Yes.
Right. Urban Meyer left Florida. Right. Mm-hmm. All of those schools are blue blood institutions. They're the cream of the college football crop. Right. Part of the thing that we have got to get out of as OSU fans is, well, if we hire, but who else are you going to get? Mike Gundy's loyal. Mike Gundy's loyal. Here's the deal, guys. In this business, even the blue bloods have people that move on, that find a better gig. That simply doesn't work. The analogy I use is you never marry a coach. You only date the coach.
Yeah, good point. That's a great way to put it.
And I think there's a mindset that we've got to get out of that, oh my gosh, if we get a good one, they leave. Guys, that happens to every college football team, not just Oklahoma State. So my deal is, guys, whether it's Gundy, whether it's Grantham, whether it's whoever the next offense coordinator is, hire the best guy for the moment. And if we win, great. You know what? Arizona State just won the Big 12 championship yesterday. You know what? If all of their coaches leave tomorrow, they still won the Big 12 championship this year. That stays forever. And I think that's the thing that you got to realize is what this is all about is putting, for lack of a better term, putting trophies on the wall. That's what this is all about. Let's get some guys that are going to be able to put a trophy on the wall. And you know what? I'm not worried about what's going to happen 15 years from now. Let's put a trophy on the wall now. Yeah. That's what we've got to be focused on, even more than ever, I think, in the transfer portal era. So that's the only rant you're going to hear me say tonight is we've got that mindset of oh my gosh, they have to stay 20 years. I'm not going to be happy. Guys, I don't care. Just win. Just go get a win this year. Go beat. Yeah. The win we got against OU last year. That still counts.
Oh hell yes, it does.
So that's my rant for the evening.
Yeah. Let me push back with this. Okay. What's the one thing that Oklahoma State fans have bitched about Gundy the most about, other than the stupid stuff he says? The actual when you look at his win and loss record and his success level at Oklahoma State, what's the one thing the Oklahoma State fans have bitched about the most?
Well, I'd say it's either one or two things. It's either he can't beat OU or he's got one conference title in 20 years.
Yeah, he's good with just making a bowl. Okay, at Oklahoma State, there's way too many fans at OSU that are good with, he won 7 or 8 games. We didn't make a bowl back in 1981, so this is a hell of a lot better than it was 40 years ago, right? That's, to me, that's the biggest complaint that I hear from OSU fans, right? Yep. So here's what I see happening here, right? Mike Gundy finally didn't make a bowl, okay? And he's having to answer to regents. He's having to get publicly humiliated. So you want to know what Mike Gundy's number one goal is going to be? You said it's all about winning trophies, right? But you want to know what the message that has been sent with how they have treated Mike Gundy. You know what that message is to Mike Gundy? Better get yourself back to a bowl, because if you don't get back to a bowl, we're going to fire your ass. So you want to know what Mike Gundy's goal is going to be now?
Just make a bowl.
To make a bowl. Yeah. That's why you hired Todd Grantham. Yeah. Just so we're not ridiculously terrible, so we can win 6 or 7 games, and they have to shut the hell up.
Yep. You know what, and then that I would say on that with, yes, and first I got to give credit where it's due. The winningest coach in Oklahoma State history. It's not even close. We've had good competitive teams. We've won more than 10-win seasons. Yeah, I'm going to give credit where it is due.
Yes.
But the other thing that I also look at within the history of Oklahoma State, and I'm speaking now to the older generation of OSU fans, the hardest thing I have with judging Mike Gundy, good or bad, is Mike Gundy started in 2005. What else happened in 2005? Boone Pickens.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt. No doubt.
And so that's my deal is you can't judge Jimmy Johnson by the same standard you're judging Mike Gundy.
100%.
Jimmy Johnson had the USS Rust-Oleum for a stadium and facilities back then. Mike Gundy's got a palace over
1,000%.
there. So I think that's my deal is, and again, I'm not saying good, bad, indifferent. I mean, you got to give Gundy credit where it's due, but I have a really hard time judging him with anybody prior to that because Boone Pickens injected about $200-something million into this program in 2005. I think any coach we had in that position was probably going to do better than the guys that had come before, just because of the funding and the resources and the emphasis on football that Oklahoma State made around that time. Yeah.
So if Mike Gundy goes 7-5 and makes the Cactus Bowl next year, okay, is he having to answer to the board?
I don't think so. I think if we go 7-5, which and again, I try to be realistic and that kind of deal. My goal is not just to make a bowl game. I want us winning titles and winning and doing those kind of things. But given the situation that we're in now, basically we're at where we're at, right? We can't change the 3-9. We can't change whatever happened. I think if we make a 7-5 season next year, I think the board's going to be happy. I think the administration's going to be happy. And to be fair, I think most fans will be happy because at least the trajectory, we've been doing this. If we make 7-5, at least we did a little bit of that, So, but then again, the problem is, okay, are we happy with 7-5 the next year, the year after that? That's where I think the frustration comes in.
All I know is if I'm Mike Gundy, I do whatever it takes not to have a losing season again.
Yeah.
I do whatever it takes to be 7-5 instead of 3-9. Right?
Yes.
To hell with making the Big 12 championship. If my goal is to keep this job, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, and to continue to make $7 million it's going to end up being. If my goal is to continue to keep this job, then goal number one is to go 7-5 and not 3-9. Mm-hmm. That's to me, that's the biggest message that has been sent to a coach who in the past, I think every Oklahoma State fan at some point has accused of being too okay with just making the Alamo Bowl and not being energetic enough to go after 5 stars and maybe swing and miss, but then give Oklahoma State a chance to win a national title. Although he's put OSU in those situations. He hasn't gotten through it yet, but that's probably one of the biggest frustrations moving forward to me. Here's what incentive did you give Mike Gundy to do anything other than just don't have a losing season next year and go to a bowl?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I don't, but and to be fair, I mean, if I'm sitting in the administration shoes right now, what I see is with 3-9, we lose donors, we lose students. I believe somebody did a study years ago. There's a correlation to if you have a successful year in athletics, your enrollment goes up. They've done 100%. Studies on that. So I think that from an administration standpoint, what they see is if we don't get back to a bowl game, if we're here again next year at 3-9, 4-7, whatever it is, we're going to continue to lose money. So I think everybody up there, I think, was thinking we got holes in the ship and quit taking on water, and then maybe we can finally get back to where we want to be. The other thing that I think is also an X factor in this that we don't know anything about is I don't know what Mike Gundy's timeline is for how much longer he wants to do this. He made some statements a long time ago that he didn't want to be the guy that was still doing this when he was 80 or something something like that. And so I don't know. I mean, here's a crazy question: is it one of those deals where if Gundy gets us back to 7-5, he says, you know what, program's now on more firm footing. Now's a good time for me to step away. I don't know. That's the other thing that we don't know. I don't think so, but you never know.
You've seen his ego at play, right?
Oh yeah. But at the same time, I think, and I will say that I do think that the same thing that kind of wore on Nick Saban, having to deal with NIL and transfer portal. I think that's probably wearing on Mike a little bit. I mean, outside of all these other issues we've been talking about,
there's no doubt.
I think he's.
There's a big difference there, though, Scott. Nick Saban had already won all of his championships. He had everything to lose, right? Yeah. To be honest with you, at this point, Mike Gundy doesn't have near as much to lose as Nick Saban did, right? I mean, all Mike Gundy has to do is be 7-5. If you go 7-5 at Alabama, they hate you, right? Okay. Yeah. And everything's relative because Oklahoma State's in the Big 12. They're in the SEC. So, in my opinion, Mike Gundy hasn't even made the playoffs yet. They hadn't made a BCS. I think they should have in 2011, but they didn't, right? So, I think it's a totally different mindset, whereas Nick Saban's like, I cannot continue the standard of excellency, and so I'm going to be tarnished because people expect me to win a national title every other year, and I'm not going to be able to do it in this climate, whereas I think Mike Gundy sees this as a new challenge where he's seeing people doubt the fact that they think he can change with the times. I think he's hearing all that, and to him, he's internalizing that and going, I'll show these suckers. And I think this is a challenge to him. So I think it's the exact opposite mentalities here with that.
Yeah, and that's something that you've mentioned before, and in some of our previous conversations, is that Gundy, for whatever reason, he likes it when he's against the ropes. He likes the challenge. He likes trying to build programs. Those are things I think he sincerely likes. I don't know, is he gonna I feel like the day-to-day job has changed just because of the NIL, the portal, all that stuff. The day-to-day job has changed considerably from what it was 2-3 years ago. Hope is he still likes that part of the job, or at least that he can tolerate that part of the job. It's enough to get us back to where we were, but I don't know. Like I said, time will tell. It's the same thing, with the Grantham hire. I'm 50-50 on it. Maybe a little bit less than excited, but at the same time, I'm going to wait and see. It's like anything else. He may come in, and that's exactly what we needed. Who knows?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Who knows? So,
absolutely. Let's get to some comments here. We have not done that. That is my fault. I have been negligent on that, Scott. But hey, Scott Swiden, thank you so much for joining. RT is not happy with the Grantham hire. Has Gundy lived long enough to see himself become the villain? Yeah, hey, Scott Swiden. It's the dawn of a new era. I know there will still be Gundy haters, but it's important with all the hurdles in front of the program like OSU. Everybody support the program. That's the key there. We can get on here and bitch and moan. Nobody bitches and moans more than I do, right? Okay, I'll willfully admit that. I love OSU. I'm a sucker. I can't help it. So whatever, okay? It is what it is, and I'm not going to apologize for that, okay? Yeah. But having said that, exactly what Scott's saying is, however you approach this, whatever words come out of your mouth, whatever emotions you feel, however you choose to deal with your emotions, at the end of the day, we need to all continue supporting this Oklahoma State program. Yeah. Well, prime example. So I've been wearing my OSU gear all day long. That doesn't change. Absolutely. That has not changed. 100%. You know what I mean? This is, and I think that's that when we talk about being loyal and true, guys, it's real easy to be loyal and true when we're standing there holding up the trophy. Now's the time that we've got to chip in. And as I said before, and I still stand by this, we've got to give Mike Gundy his shot. Absolutely. The guy's got 20 years in. Let's give him his shot. If he fails, okay, here's the good news. And again, I always try to find silver linings. The good news is if Mike doesn't get it done, we have recourse now. There's accountability. That's why it had to be done, yes. Yeah. That part of it had to be done. Yeah. So we're not hamstrung by this. We're not going to be hamstrung by a huge buyout that if we have another 3-9 season, we can't do anything about it. Sure, absolutely. So I think that's if there's anything that's good that comes out of this, guys, we're not hamstrung by that. Let's give Gundy his shot. Continue to support the program. Continue to buy tickets. Donate to the NIL. Do all the things that it takes to win. Because here's the deal, guys. We can gripe and moan and all that kind of stuff about it. If we don't have dollars in that NIL, it will not happen. I can guarantee it won't happen. I can't guarantee that if we do that it will. Sure. But I can't guarantee if we don't, it won't. That's a great point. That's a great point. You said, say that again. I said I can't guarantee if you donate to it. Can't guarantee that it's going to happen, but I can guarantee if you don't, won't. Yep. That's the old saying. I can't guarantee that hard work will create success for you, but I can guarantee the fact that if you don't work hard, that you are going to fail. Right. That's where Oklahoma State's at right now. So that kind of goes back to if I go to, you've been in the business world, and if I go to Scott McKinley and I go, hey, Scott, you're the one who knows more about this than anybody. I mean, hell, you're the winningest coach here ever. Okay. Who am I to tell you how to do anything football related? All I can tell you is this last season was not acceptable. We have structured the contract to where If you don't win here, we are going to. This is big business. We can't afford to have 3-9 seasons. We can't afford to be average here, Mike, because our school makes too much money off of it. So you go do what you think you need to do for this program. You have a total autonomy over that, but just know if whatever it is you do doesn't come up with the results, then you will no longer be the coach at Oklahoma State, and we have the ability to do that. To me, that's all that needed to be said right there. That's all of the oversight Mike Gundy needed.
Yeah. I think the complicating factor that got in there is, okay, or if you don't, we're going to fire you for cause, and you're not going to get that huge buyout. I think that was the complicating.
Don't you see that going away though?
Do what?
Don't you see that going away?
I think
we're going to go through all this and still have a 5-year automatic rollover each year.
No, I don't think it's going to be like that. Like I said, and we don't. As of right now, I don't know exactly what the details are going to be. My guess is this is just a guess, total guess. I think it's going to be in the range of a 3 to 4 year contract. Obviously, we know it's going to be reduced salary, that kind of thing. I think that automatic rollover and the length, the 5-year contract, that was the albatross, if you will, that we needed to have taken off the university because frankly, the contract, it was very one sided. Again. Not saying that Gundy doesn't deserve to be paid well. He's got tenure in. He has had success, but at the same time, you can't. That's not okay 100%. With the university. It's not okay with the university.
Mike has to understand that. He understands that.
Oh yeah. No. And that's the thing. People are like, Mike Gundy is a smart guy. Hey,
if you want to give it to me, I'm going to take it, right? And he finagled, but. And as long as we're winning, okay, but sure, he has to understand that's no good.
Yeah, he knows. He knows. Mike Gundy is not a dumb individual. He's a very intelligent individual, actually. So yeah, it's my hope is that after this week we'll be able to move on about it. I think I will say this. I'm sure Gundy is ready to start talking about, hey, who we got coming in on the transfer portal. Maybe do some kind of introduction or something like that with our coordinators. Which I think would be, in my opinion, I don't know exactly what needs to be done. We need something good PR coming out of the west end of Boone Pickett Stadium. Yeah, whether it's, hey, we're excited about this new, let's talk about the signing class. Let's talk about who we bring. If we bring in a splash portal get, if we're excited about a new coordinator, we need to start having good things. We need to start talking about good things that we got moving forward instead of just dwelling on the negative. Because because donors like positive. Nobody goes and sells something by being, negative down in the dumps all the time. You got to be excited about what we have moving forward. And I think that's something I think that we do need to change.
Yeah. So Eddie Mason, this is a good point. And this is kind of a, hey, you can have your own opinion on this. The way I see it is that recruiting is out the window. It's all about the money. There's no more loyalty thanks to NIL and the portal. So I guess here's the question. Do you go get a Todd Grantham to try to be, the 7-5 team next year, so you don't have a catastrophic 3-9 and everybody loses their mind and has a meltdown down like we did this year? Or do you say, hey, I know the transfer portal is opening tomorrow. This year's probably a punt, but that's okay as long as we take our time and go find the right hires. Which way should Oklahoma State have approached this? Take your time, find the right people, or hurry up and get your coordinators in place in front of the transfer portal opening up so we can give ourselves the best chance to go 7-5?
As defeatist as this is going to sound, I think right now, because of the time constraints that we're under, we got to how do we find a way to get back to 7-5?
Right. That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I said a minute ago.
Yeah.
If you're Mike Gundy, that's exactly how you're thinking, right?
Yeah. Well, but again, and I go back to this is, okay, let's say that we bring whoever the offensive coordinator is, he comes in here next year and he lights it up, which is what we all hope for. Okay. USC calls. They're going to double his salary and we can't match it. Guys, there's nothing we can do about that. Unfortunately, that's the way the world works. I wish we had buckets of money, but at the same time, okay, at least you made the right hire and we lit it up on offense for this year. That's really, at the end of the day, that's all we can really hope for and focus on.
Yeah. Yeah. So, hey, you want to talk about good news? I just got a message from Simona Falitolo, who is one of Oklahoma State's newest recruits out of St. George Utah. He is an offensive lineman, and he is 6'6", 300 pounds. And I just got a message back from him that he would like to come on and talk tomorrow. So that'll be kind of fun. I've reached out to a couple of guys and see if they might want to come on and talk and give their story a little bit. So that's an interesting conversation. That is, hey, should you take your time and try to rebuild from the start to make Oklahoma State, give them the best chance that 3 years from now we're playing for titles? Or do you put the Band-Aid on it, go higher in a hurry, try to get back to 7-5? That's a great point there, Eddie. Zach Uklea, I think this program needed to kick up in the ass. I think we all agree with that. We had to make changes. I agree. Okie Light, yeah, we addressed that Todd Grantham is the D coordinator, and then Ryan Osborne is the defensive line coach. I think once they hired Osborne, it was pretty obvious that Grantham was going to be the defensive coordinator, because everybody was like, wait a minute, we're hiring position coaches before we hire the DC. And so you put two and two together, you realize that Osborne and Grantham worked together at Florida. And so it's like, oh, well, this means that they're getting ready to hire Grantham, which is exactly what happened.
Yeah. So no, but like I said, things are going to move fairly quickly. Well, again, they have to. Portal's open in just a few hours, so we've got to be able to get that done. The other thing that I would also say is with NIL, again, and I feel like that one of the shifts that we're going to look at is you don't pay half your money to one player. Let's go out. Let's go out. Yes. Let's go out there and we can get good quality offensive linemen. We can get a good quality running back. And you never know. There's still, and this is one thing that does give me some hope with Mike Gundy. He has always been good finding the diamond in the rough. The guy. So basically playing the money ball. I love, if you can't tell, good, but Mike Gundy's been very good about finding that. There are still, I guarantee there's out there right now that are going to be in the portal that are good finds, that are going to cost this much, but they play here. You just got to go find them. So, and that part I think Gundy is very good at it, and hopefully that'll continue. Yeah,
Jonathan L. says was hoping for someone younger on the staff, and he got fired at Florida before going to the Saints. I can tell you, here's the nuclear fallout of somebody like Brian Nardo. It was not going to be somebody that was young, and it was not going to be somebody that was even remotely inexperienced. It was going to be an older, experienced person after the Brian Nardo fiasco. I mean, that was just obvious, right?
Yeah, and I think what would you really expect Gundy to go do another Google search and get a guy from Shippensburg and let's do the same thing we just did and everybody's going to get excited about it? No, they want everybody. I guarantee that entire administration wanted somebody that has got experience. And for what it's worth, I'm sure having the fact that this guy, the Grantham, does have the NFL experience. Yeah. Okay, that at least counts for something. Yeah.
I think it's at least solid. I mean, I'm just saying. I think this gets you back to 7-5 is what I'm saying.
Yeah, which, like I said, I think that's kind of our goal right now. So we'll see what happens. I think, like I said, I still remember when Mike hired Mike Yursich. We were all scratching our head, like what are we doing? Well,
I'm still not a fan.
Yeah, you're still not a fan?
Oh no, no, he was way too. I mean, like if his game plan worked that day, it was great. Like if it matched the defense he's going, but if the defense was a bad matchup for him, he had no idea how to adjust. So he had great days and he had terrible days.
Now how would you compare Yursich to Casey Dunn?
Yursich had better high days. He had more big days. He had the same lows because he had the same problem that Casey Dunn had, in the sense that if he showed up and the handful of concepts he put together that week didn't work, he had no idea how to make adjustments. Right. But Mike Yursich, I think, was better from Sunday to Friday, actually putting together a game plan and a handful of 5 or 6 concepts that actually would work. So I think Mike Yursich had a better brain to put a game plan together. I think they were both equally as terrible offensive coordinators in terms of calling plays during a game, making adjustments, trying to call this based on what the defense is doing. So I am an absolute no on Mike Yursich.
Yeah, I don't think Gundy's going to bring him back.
Well, my opinion means nothing, and I'm sure there's a million OSU fans that are probably throwing their whatever at the screen telling me I'm stupid. That's fine too, because I've been told that plenty, but that's just my opinion.
So here's another interesting question, though. When you look at Grantham, he has worked with some of the best athletes in the world. You know, he's worked with some football players these guys have played football for a very long time. They're professional. They understand schemes. They understand concepts. One of the things we talked about, though, is we don't necessarily want a guy that comes in and overcomplicates things. Sure. Sometimes we just need to let's keep it simple for these guys. Do you think Grantham's a guy that's going to come in and keep it simple, or do you think he's going to try to instill too much too quickly, kind of a thing?
Well, he's coming from the NFL, and I can tell you the NFL is your PhD in X's and O's, right? Yeah. And so that's a good question to ask, because he's going to have to, with today's day and age. Okay, so likely a large part of our defense isn't even in Stillwater yet, right?
Yes.
So he's going to come to Stillwater and have to teach a whole bunch of new kids that weren't even here before this entirely new scheme. So even if he wants to make it complicated, like his entire goal is to make it an NFL X and O type of scheme that's super complicated and intricate and all this, he's not even going to have that option to do that, because he's going to be not even get his kids until he's going to have one spring with them and then a summer, right? And I can tell you, that's enough time to put in a skill and a couple of blitz packages and a couple of maybe exotic zone packages. That's not enough to put anything intricate and complicated behind. So even if he wants to be complicated, he's not going to be. So the question is going to be, how good of a defense can he put out there with somewhat less of a complicated X and O scheme that you probably wanted coming from the NFL?
Yeah, and that's why I asked the question, because he's coming from the level where I mean it's incredible what some of those guys will come up with in the NFL. From a schematic standpoint, which obviously, I mean, the good news is obviously he's worked at the highest levels. He's probably he's been exposed to an awful lot of philosophies, a lot of packages, a lot of schemes, those kind of things. So at least that's a positive. Yeah. But again, you're not going to be able to implement that where you're going to have a whole new team. You're only going to have for spring and summer. I think that's going to be very, very difficult.
Yeah. So if I were to ask you the part of Oklahoma State's defense that has struggled the most, in the last 20 years, but certainly in the last 5. Take out 2021, because that's the greatest defense Oklahoma State's ever had. So take out the outlier. What's the part of the defense would you say has been the worst?
Without having looked at the statistics,
I think it's easily the secondary, right?
I was going to say probably secondary.
So why not go get a secondary guy as your defensive coordinator? That's good. So, there's 2 ways to build a defense. You have it like Grantham's a defensive line coach. We already have Joe Bob Clements on staff. You just went and hired Ryan Osborne, right? But what we still have now is Tim Duffy and Dan Hammerschmidt, who were just the safeties and corners coaches of the worst defense in NCAA last year. So you've stacked up defensive line type guys with your defensive coordinator hire, and done absolutely nada, zero to address your secondary concerns. So to answer one of the questions in here, if you go get a Brian Smith, who is already a safeties coach, there's 2 ways to build a defense. You have guys like Todd Grantham, like Todd Grantham, that's a defensive line coach. He is going to build his defense from the box, and then he's going to have his secondary play off of that box, if you will, right? So he's going to have his set of box plays and concepts, and then whatever coverage is in the back is going to have to cover whatever they're doing up front. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Versus if you go get a secondary guy like Brian Smith, he's going to put in the secondary coverage first, and then the front 7 is going to have to cover what the back end is doing. So what I wanted Oklahoma State to do was go in and get a back-end guy, build a very strong secondary, and then let your front 6 play off of that secondary and just make a okay average front 6 with a really, really, really good back end and build it from that perspective. Because to me, to me, by not addressing the back end with this hire, I don't see where Oklahoma State actually, from an X&O perspective, went and did anything that improved anything today. That's my, and I hope I'm totally wrong on that. I really hope I am.
Well, what it tells me is that probably the thinking is, and I could be wrong on this, I think their thinking is because we had such poor D line play, it put our secondary in really, really bad spots. Now, there are times when I would agree with that, but there's also times when I saw our secondary, oh my gosh, it was just awful. I mean, just absolutely terrible technique, terrible fundamentals. So I'm kind of tending to agree with you. I do think if you just ask me to build a defense, you know what I mean, I'm in that start in the box standpoint. And my reasoning is your D line is involved in every single play, whether it's a run play or pass play, that kind of deal, where your secondary, yes, they can do run support, that kind of deal. But, I mean, my gosh, how many rushing yards did we give up this year? We set some bad record or something like that.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. I just because we had issues on the D line and that needs to be addressed doesn't mean that we also don't have issues in the secondary that very badly need to be addressed as well.
Yeah, and we have a comment here from Scott White and Tim Duffy and Dan Hammersmith need to go. I can't disagree with you on that, and so I trust Joe Bob Clements. Joe Bob Clements knows what he's doing in the box, correct?
Yes,
okay?
I would agree.
Right?
Yeah.
You just went and hired a defensive line coach, Ryan Osborne, right? Okay. That obviously Todd Grantham trusts, okay? So who in the hell do we have on the back end right now that anybody trusts in terms of a coach?
Yeah.
We just hired a defensive coordinator, and I have no freaking clue what their plan is in the secondary. That's my point.
Here's the other question I would wonder is, okay, you're bringing in, we're doing a little bit. Now, I do like the fact that, okay, I'm sure Osborne was coming in with Grantham, but don't do what we did with Nardo, where we brought in Nardo and he didn't get to bring in anybody that he wanted,
I agree.
That kind of deal.
Totally.
So, I mean, I would like to think that if Grantham has a very strong opinion about somebody that's a good secondaries coach, I'd like to think that we're listening and we would be willing to make a change if a change could be made. So, I would agree with you. I'd agree with that.
I would feel a lot better if the next move that we heard was that Todd Grantham was hiring a corners and safeties coach that he handpicked. But I can tell you right now, if we go into next season with him as the DC and then we just run it back with Dan Hammersmith and Tim Duffy, okay, then in my opinion, we have just flipped a coin and just kind of made a decision because we felt like we had to make one and done absolutely not anything to actually address what was, because to me, on the defensive side of the ball, okay, who do you think the best defensive coach is at Oklahoma State?
Currently still
position
on staff?
Coach, yes.
Yeah, I'd probably go with Joe Bob.
Correct. So you already have the best coach you already have on the defensive staff is Joe Bob. So go get the guy in the back end now that can be Joe Bob has that part covered enough, right? So now we need to go get the other guys. So that to me, that part of it, I don't think it was thought through quite that. I think they just went and got the best guy they could have. I think once you told him that he had to have experience, it gets back to the conversation of did we go get experience or did we go get a retread? I think that's the question you have to ask yourself.
Yeah, and only time will tell. That's the only way we're going to find out.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. And like I said, I hope I am totally right. Hey, we're going to go a couple of more minutes here. Hey, I would hope so. Be pretty hard to be worse than what we were last year, no doubt. Bill G saying the national reaction will wear off. Yeah, no doubt. RT Craddock may be the new OC. Allegedly, we'll get into Craddock on a different show. But yes, we were talking about our defensive coordinator, Todd Grantham, just got demoted to senior analyst from his defensive line position. Hey, Wes, it's better to go get the guy you want than jump the gun because of the portal opening tomorrow. That's the conversation we had just a minute ago. Hey, RT, I'll say this about Nardo. He didn't get to bring in any of his or implement any of his own coaches or implement his own system. We just covered that, no doubt about that. Hey, Bill Belichick says, Redeem Patriot. Redeem Patriot says, Bill Belichick is available, right? Hey, Lonnie Olson, if they had cause to fire him, now they're complicit in whatever he did, and it will come back to bite them. Yeah, so if they did, well, that makes sense there. That's kind of an interesting point. I'd never thought of it that way. Hey, by the way, Oklahoma State is back in basketball. Well, let's hope they're back in basketball. I really, really like Steve Lutz, man. And I'm telling you right now, here's one of the reasons why I am so fired up about the way this went down is Weiberg. I've known Weiberg all the way back to his dad being the basketball coach at NOC, right? Weiberg's a stud, man. I'm telling you, listen to me. Weiberg is awesome. He was made, not only was he meant and made as a human being to be an athletic director, he was even more than that, meant and made to be the athletic director at Oklahoma State, okay? There are few people that I would trust on earth to get every single athletic situation fixed on earth than I would Chad Weiberg. That's another part of this why I'm fired up, is because in my mind, with all the experience I have in athletics, I have a total faith in Chad Weiberg. If I have a problem, I go to Chad and I go, Chad, we got problems, get it fixed. And I put my faith in Chad.
Yeah. No, well, like I said before, I have the hires that he has made have, in my opinion, have been good ones.
Yes.
I love when I'm seeing I love when I'm seeing out of Steve Lutz. Now, to be fair with our men's basketball program, the Big 12 is incredibly difficult.
Yes.
We could have rough waters ahead in the Big 12, but I love what we're trying to do because again, that was a complete rebuild. The David Taylor hire for wrestling, that was an absolute home run in my opinion. So no, some people, there's some people that try to criticize Weiberg. I think up to this point he's done a phenomenal job. I really do.
He has, man.
I mean, I got absolutely no complaints. And again, I think the end result, go back, taking us all full circle on this. The end result with the change in Mike Gundy's contract needed to happen.
100%.
That it needed
100%.
to happen. We just didn't. I wish it would have gone down a little differently.
Agreed.
I guarantee if you could, put some truth serum and everybody involved, they probably would agree with that. They wish it would have gone down differently. But at the same time, we got what was needed.
Yep.
That needed to happen. Hopefully, we're going to be able to move on. I do agree with the poster's comments on that the national furor over this is about to go away. Why? Because we got playoffs. We got all kinds of stuff heading our way. Doing that stuff, which, by the way, did you see? I posted on Facebook. Texas got into the playoff in the mighty SEC, and they beat not a single top 25 team.
Yeah, that's a whole deal for a whole nother show.
Yeah.
That is a cluster. I say just let the Big Ten and SEC go on their own. Mm-hmm. Let everybody else have the NCAA. And then just make sure that they understand, hey, you're not going to be invited to March Madness. You're not going to be invited to the College World Series. You're not going to be invited to any other NCAA championship. So you two go have your own league and play whatever it is you want to call it and whatever championship you want to call it. You guys play each other, have your football championship. We are going to have the NCAA. We're going to have our own championship over here in every sport. And let's see how much interest that there is whenever it's Alabama against Ohio State every week. I don't see how that could work. Hey, we have a great comment here, and we're going to get to Scott Swyden's comment because I always want to get to his comments because he always has some great things to say. Also, Wet Blanket, and then we're going to get out of here. So, hey, Wet Blanket says, I'd say gains are won in the trenches. Yes, definitely, as far as if you stop the run, you get pressure on the quarterback, that kind of thing. Hey, Scott Swyden says worst technique in secondary in the history and not sold on Clements. This goes to my point. Linebacker play other than Nick Martin has been horrendous, and Martin was mostly on his own talent. If you've heard me talk at all, Joe Bob Clements is a defensive line coach. I have no idea what – the first suggestion I made was put Joe Bob Clement back at defensive line and then work from there. So this is even more of a head-scratcher because I agree with Scott that the linebacker play was horrendous last year. And now what you've done is solidified that Joe Bob Clement, in my opinion, is going to be out of position again next year.
Yeah. Yeah, that
Which
just
makes no sense to me.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Not to me,
you got to put in people in positions where that's what their strength is. The only thing I can figure is, okay, they figure, all right, we're bringing in, we're only got time to bring in one assistant coach, so we got to bring in a D-line. I don't know. I'm trying to rationalize it or try to figure out the logic behind it. But
this is who Craddock wanted. Craddock wanted Osborne. It's that simple.
Yeah.
But is that a plus positive, because you already had Clements, who could have went down to D-line, found a different linebackers coach, and solved two problems of one. That's kind of my point. That's another negative towards Grantham, is the fact that I hope I didn't say Craddock. Craddock's the offense. If that's another negative to me to Grantham, is that now we don't get to move Joe Bob Clements down to the defensive line. He has to stay at linebackers, which I'm not in the favor of.
Yeah. No, I'm in agreement.
It is what it is. Hey, this has been a great show, man. I like to get fired up and cuss and discuss Oklahoma State athletics. So I really appreciate everybody hanging in. Scott, I always greatly appreciate your wonderful comments and your level head and just all of the great analysis you give. So, Scott, thank you so much. Any final thoughts?
No, just like I said, as we always say, continue to support the program. I'm sure we're probably going to be on here next week, and we're going to have even more news to report.
Oh yeah.
But again, I think the hope is again, we need to get this all behind us, because you know what, guys, we got football coming up next September, and the clock is ticking.
Yeah.
So,
all right, thanks, man.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, go Pokes.
Yeah, sounds good. What plan on next Sunday, same time?
Next Sunday, same time, man.
Sounds good.
We'll see you.